So now back to these two verses that were separated by a chapter, but in reality are a run-on sentence. In that these two verses are describing sequential events, I'm going to show you how it is that they are related. As in, these two verses are the equivalent of the creation week, but instead of a whole chapter, we only get two verses. And I need to warn you, when I first discovered this, it blew my mind and affected me for days. And it will contradict so much of what you are so sure is true. And on top of that, God seems to be hiding it till we are ready by giving us so few details. So what I'm saying is, I don't expect everyone to see this the way I do, but I want to share it anyways, even though some will use it against me. Okay, here we go. Verse 15, "And anyone not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." Verse 1, "Now I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, also there was no more sea." Okay, so the lake of fire is replaced by the new heavens and the new earth. And now we understand that the lake of fire is what was left of the old heaven and the old earth. We see a relationship here. But do you see a creation process going on here as well? Okay, so what else? All the spirits of the lost are cast into the lake of fire, but no mention of God breathing his ruach into the heavens or earth this time to recreate the new heavens. Instead, we have all the spirits of the lost being cast into the lake of fire, which is the destroyed heavens, and the next thing we know is the lake of fire is gone and replaced by the new heavens and the new earth. So, do you see it? If not, let me try again. The lake of fire is the first heavens and the first earth. All the spirits of the lost are cast into it, and the next thing we see is there's a new heavens and a new earth. Yeah, if you need to pause the video and take a long walk, that is understandable, because that's what I had to do when this hit me. So God literally recycles the spirits of the lost to remake the new heavens and the new earth. But as heavy as this is, consider that this is the only way and the best way. Our new heavens will be a memorial of what was lost, a mosaic of souls in our heavens that will remain for eternity, forever reminding us of the heavy price of sin. Just like the scars in Jesus' hands and feet, the memorial in the sky will remain for eternity to teach the universe for eternity of why sin can be no more. If this is what ends up happening, now combine this verse again, and it would mean that the lost choose this fate. They themselves will take responsibility for what they destroyed and offer their spirits to rebuild it, and maybe even find solace in the fact that this memorial will help convince the universe to never repeat their horrible mistake. As you have noticed, this is a very different storyline than what religion teaches. So next I'm going to deal with the beliefs that have been preventing people from understanding Revelation for the last 2,000 years. Probably the biggest hurdle is almost every single Christian denomination teaches that the lost burn in hell for eternity, and they believe the Bible is so clear on this that we have no choice but to accept it. So next, I'm going to show you what the Bible actually teaches about hell. Because right now, for many people watching this is the first thing stopping them from accepting everything they've just heard. Now, most Christians will say that in order to get around believing in hell, you have to ignore many clear and obvious Bible verses, or as they say, to cherry pick, and to do what's called scriptural gymnastics. So let's see if that's true. So first I want to cover the ideology behind hell, then contrast this with the Bible. Here are just a few quotes from some famous theologians. I've chosen the shorter ones. Samuel Hopkins, "This display of the divine character will be most entertaining to all who love God, will give them the highest and most ineffable pleasure. Should the fire of this eternal punishment cease, it would in a great measure obscure the light of heaven, and put an end to a great part of the happiness and glory of the blessed." Here's a more modern quote. "Love and pity for hell's occupants will not enter our hearts." There are many similar quotes like this available online from famous theologians over the last few hundred years. This doesn't mean all Christians agree with these quotes, but regardless, almost all Christians believe in the doctrine of hell. So now let's contrast this with these extra details that John reveals in the book of Revelation. God himself will be with them and be their God, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There shall be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying. There shall be no more pain, for the former things have passed away. Now this verse is positioned at the end of the 1,000 years, and it says God wipes away our tears. When? At the end of the 1,000 years. So if that's the case, then what have we been doing as we were going through the books of heaven for the previous 1,000 years? Crying, weeping for the lost. See why I keep stressing how important it is to focus on these extra details that Revelation includes? What a difference these verses make. Today we have not one church teaching anything even close to this, and in most cases it's the exact opposite. So that's a good point, right? But what about verses like this one? Then he will also say to those on the left hand, "Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels." Sounds pretty crystal clear that the devil and the angels and all the rest of the lost will burn forever, doesn't it? Can't we just accept what the Bible says? Okay, so let's accept that this fire is everlasting fire just as it says, and that this everlasting fire is God's fire and it's different than our fire. Now we're going to read Ezekiel 28:18, which is actually referring to Satan. So let's see what it says. "You defiled your sanctuaries by the multitude of your iniquities, by the iniquity of your trading. Therefore I brought fire from your midst. It devoured you, and I turned you to ashes upon the earth in the sight of all who saw you. All who knew you among the people are astonished at you. You have become a horror, and shall be no more forever." Okay, so which verse is right? In the previous verse, it says Satan is thrown in everlasting fire. In Revelation, it says he's thrown in the lake of fire. You realize what this means? The lake of fire and everlasting fire are the same. And then you have this verse here which says Satan is reduced to ashes and will be no more forever. Are these verses at odds with each other? Or is there a way to make them all right? So, God is an everlasting fire, but Satan is not consciously suffering in it forever. Just as the verse says, he shall be no more forever. And that is what it means to be punished forever, or everlasting. You never ever get another chance. You are ashes for all eternity. Now, isn't it interesting that we have this fire coming from within Satan, not from God? Remember that God is protecting us from him for our own good. What would have happened if someone ran through the veil in the temple and into God's presence? The veil protects us from God for our own good. So is this simply the result of Satan charging into God's presence, after being warned time and time again not to do it? Now the sad irony about this is, look at what Ezekiel said about Lucifer when he used to be in heaven. Verse 13, "You were in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was your covering. You were the anointed cherub who covers. I established you. You were on the holy mountain of God. You walked back and forth in the midst of fiery stones." It is fairly accepted that these fiery stones are referring to God's presence. And when you do a word search in the Bible on fire, it's pretty clear that God is a fire. So Satan used to be able to walk right in God's immediate presence, right in his holy fire. And that is how his life will end.